All right, so today is November 5th, 2020, and I'm here to celebrate one of my all time favorite franchises and favorite games, that being Twisted Metal. Yep, 25 years ago today, the original Twisted Metal was released on November 5th, and it definitely paved the way for molecular combat as a whole. Because even though we had Mario Kart long before, Destruction Derby before that, we never really had a kind of like a darker, edgier version of that. Thankfully, that's what we got here, and so much more. I've always considered this my one of my all-time favorite franchises in gaming. I remember reading some magazines about it. And granted, this is when I got a PlayStation at 11 years old, 1995, when I finished grade five, and I gotta say I couldn't have been more thankful to get it at that time because this is when they started getting a lot of really amazing titles. This is when they really started to take off, you know, as a console. So that being said, I remember seeing, there was some little bit of hype surrounding it because, it looked fairly interesting to me. The first thing that stuck out to me were the pictures of obviously Sweet Tooth in his ice cream truck. So I was like, hey, this looks kind of interesting. This looks kind of neat. So I rented it, at our local video store. I think it might have been our local Blockbuster or something like that. And I was hooked from the get go. Like I must have played it for hours and hours at a time, and I was so sad to have to return it. But I'm like, I remember asking my dad, God rest his soul. I was like, Dad, please get me this. Please get me this for Christmas. I have to get this game. Ironically enough, I rented it again, I think, and I played it for hours nonstop, even though. And he's like, don't worry, Gary, we're going to get it for you. And thankfully, he got it for me. And I couldn't be more thankful at that point. And I mean, a lot of things stuck out to me. The grittiness, the atmosphere, being in downtown LA. These are things I really enjoyed about it. Having been to LA, I can kind of relate to that. And each character was very interesting. Each character had their own story that made you want to play through it. Because I remember playing through it for hours, trying to unlock all their endings, and I figured out a cheap way to beat the last boss, that being Minion, which is fairly easy once you learn how to do it. But it takes a lot of patience, though, unfortunately. But now I played the heck out of it up until Twisted Metal 2 came out. And you can totally tell that Twisted Metal 2 was the ride that this company wanted you to take. This is the direction they really wanted to go here. Because not only did it surpass the original game in every way, it improved upon it too. And I've always considered that one to be one of my favorites of all time too, because the settings were a lot better this time. This time it wasn't just one area; it was all over the world, and you got to see more of Calypso's backstory, and you also got to see a better, backstory of the characters too. Like I like the animations that you had; I thought they were really neat, and you don't really see a lot of that. And the overall feeling and setting was, really that bleak, unpleasant setting. That this man's in charge. This man is, enjoys destruction, death, and destruction, and he brings it everywhere he goes. It was bleak, but it was amazing and very dark, and and true to form. My favorite character in the second one, I think, may have been, I think it was Spectre, of course, because ghost missiles. But then, unfortunately, when you reach a peak, there's only one place to go, and that's downhill. And sadly, that happened with Twisted Metal 3. Now, gameplay was fun, the graphics were good, but a lot of the darkness and grittiness wasn't there, and I really took away from a lot of the experience. And the biggest glaring issue were the controls. The controls were absolutely horrendous for that game, and it made it almost unplayable. So I like some of the characters they introduced. They were fairly interesting, but ultimately it could have been so much more had they fixed controllers, had they polished it up a little better, but it fell flat in its face. Thankfully, 989 Studios improved upon it with Twisted Metal 4, but even then, I felt that was kind of lacking. That could have been, because I thought character-wise, a lot of them just weren't very interesting. I also didn't like the fact that a lot of the boss battles too, like they made a lot of the old characters bosses, and I just didn't think that worked as well. There were some interesting things about it, but I just found that they toned it down. They tried to make it a little more PG, and I think that's where my biggest complaint was too. But then Incog Inc. got the rights back, and we got Twisted Metal Black, and I've always considered that to be one of the greatest games I've ever played. One of my favorite games ever of all time, and one of my favorites in the series, of course. They went back to the roots. They took a lot of the cheesiness out, and I got it was a very disturbing experience. And sadly, I don't think we could make. I don't think a game like that could be made today with the PC culture. But I love that every character was dark and bleak, but also interesting too. So it's one of the main reasons why I actually got a PS2, to be honest with you. So then came Twisted Metal Head On. Now back to the original game. What I loved about Twisted Metal Head On is a lot of the extra features too made it interesting. It still stayed true to form. It still felt like a Twisted Metal game compared to 3 and 4. But this time there were a lot of there were a lot of elements that we didn't know. Like for instance, like a lot of special features showed the endings and actual cutscenes from the original Twisted Metal game. And if you watch a lot of them, you can see why they were taken out because they were very hokey, very cheesy, and really just I think it would have took away from the experience. So if you watch them, just look at Twisted Metal Lost Endings or Endings, and you'll see what I mean. You can, or if you have Twisted Metal Head On, you can find them on there. But definitely, Head On was also one of my, not the best in the franchise. I think though it could have been a lot more. It could have been a lot better. But obviously, it was made for PSP, so it's kind of justifiable. It's somewhat understandable. But then came Twisted Metal 2012, and that one really, that one blew that one set it to new heights. That's what I meant. It set the franchise, it set the bar at an all-time high. And it's really unfortunate that we didn't get any more after that because I played the heck out of that one too. Because that was always one of my favorite. I mean, yeah, there were problems with it too. I mean, like we only had those 3 endings and playing through all these different. It would have been nice to have an ending for each of the characters, but we didn't get that. We only had those 3, which was kind of a letdown in its own right. And it's unfortunate because it's been 8 years now and we haven't had a Twisted Metal game since then. I know that there's been talks of it, but we haven't heard anything so far. But I think with this next gen console, especially with PS5 coming out, you really got to wonder. Imagine what they could do with that. Imagine the improvements they can make. I think they could make probably one of the greatest games ever made if they wanted to, depending on I don't know where the studio is right now. Now I know this franchise has a very tragic backstory. After Twisted Metal Black, half of them, or more than half, I can't remember. No, I don't know the exact story. Now there's Twisted Metal documentary. I'm gonna leave the link down below. I recommend checking that out. They have better backstory than I ever could about it. But I know that half of them died in that horrible plane crash, and that's why we never got a direct sequel. And it's very sad when you really think about it. So, and my thoughts go out to those families. I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like. Oh man. So, in closing, I want to ask, what were your favorite memories of this franchise? What was your favorite game in the series? Who were your favorite character or characters? And would you be up for seeing another game in the series? I personally would. I don't know what you think, because in a market flooded with Call of Duties, Rainbow Six, EA's sports games, and 2K sports games, it'd be nice to have some variety in there because we haven't had a very good molecular combat game in a long, long time. Not since Twisted Metal 2012. So, till then, please rate, comment, subscribe, and here's 25 years of Twisted Metal. Good night, everyone.